I go 0 to 100 real quick. Hey, let me check that. Real quick. Wait, just let me let it. I go 0 to 100 real quick. Hey. Speaking marathon begins in 3, 2, 1. Am I someone worthy of being valued? Well, from a title, I'm guessing you clicked because of pure curiosity, or well, maybe you find yourself in a similar situation. But let me ask the question again. Am I someone worthy of being valued? That's quite the question, don't you agree? Let me take you through how I got it. But before that, this is Sebworks Radio, the place where I break down the structures of our world, our society, and our personalities. And this also will be a follow up from the first episode. So if you're into this one, watching the first one will give you a lot more context on this episode in general. And on my side, I recommend watching it on 2x, but I'm also the type of person who would watch a general video on 4x instead of 2x if I could, because some people I find talk slow, but that is just me. So now let's get into it. I've also actually seen that my eyes I look very sleepy. It's been a hectic week, but I'm sure you guys don't really care too much about that. You're here for the content, so let's get into it. So, am I someone worthy of being valued? Where does that come from? Now, I'm supposed to start off from a young age with me. Oh, and let's suppose one last thing. I do have new lights, and I'm sitting down this time because instead of standing up like I did in the first one, because well, I got the new lights because I wanted to check out the new setup and all of that. But I'm sitting down instead of standing up because well, it's been a hectic week and I haven't been sleeping that much. Anyway, so am I someone worthy of being valued? Now, from a young age, okay, so let's start off with that I am an introvert, right? Now, from a young age, I've tended to be drawn towards nature, or well, the quiet spaces. I've drawn to the quiet spaces through my introverted nature while also embracing, I suppose, nature and the feeling. Sorry about that. And the feeling of being drawn into nature and what nature is, the peacefulness of it, I suppose. Okay, actually, not so much the peacefulness, but rather there's peacefulness in nature, and then there's a magical side about it. If you get what I mean, the subtle art. There's subtleness that goes with it. That it's kind of hard to explain, but there's a peacefulness of it, and then there's the magical side of it, which well, I did explain in the what was it? I'm getting more in nature video, but this is just a new thing. But I'm just realizing now, looking back, when I've been younger, there's a peaceful side of nature that I've been drawn towards, while also combining the introverted nature of wanting the quiet spaces. So whenever I was in the quiet spaces, for me, how that would go is instead of actually thinking, which well, I have. The funny thing is, okay, I suppose there's a okay, but how it went before was that this is primary roughly. I would sit in a quiet space, and then I'd be able to just be one with the energy of nature, if that kind of makes sense. But that's kind of the way things went. So it's like a two-sided thing because there's that nature, and then since now that then got replaced by since now improvement became my quote unquote life's work. That then my life's work became the thing that I was doing, which is then I think why now in suppose 2024 I get back to the old feeling that I'm getting more peaceful or more understanding the subtleties of the magical side of nature. So I suppose thinking now, just thinking about it, that's an old thing that's coming back now, but that's how I've been to nature. Now, okay, so back to the quietness has been what I've enjoyed, I suppose. And even and sort of tended towards more so in, I suppose, last year and this year. It's more so I've tended to become being more in my own space since I was out of it with learning new personalities, learning new skills, learning new characteristics for my own personality, which I suppose we will get into sometime in this radio session or in a video that I drop. So I've been getting back into it, but or what I've been tending towards and having to accept that I am an introvert, even though I've been learning skills making me a good communicator and all of that. But coming to terms with accepting that I am an introvert, and that's then now I've been able to build up more and more tending towards being the quiet and introverted nature, that quiet side, and all of that. But I suppose we should go back to the story now. So from a young age, I've enjoyed my quiet spaces, and I suppose another funny thing is when I'm around. Say I'm in a group with no friends, so I don't have any friends around, but I'm in a group with other people and all of that, and they're talking and all of that. Funny enough, I find that peaceful as well because I'm then able to tune out everything. So I tune out everything, and then I'm able to then just get into a sort of uh for those that don't technically or haven't technically watched cartoons, which well, I don't think that anyone who hasn't watched cartoons, but if there are, it's probably might be hard to visualize. But anyway, it's like suppose it's not a force field, but the best way to talk about it would be a force field where everything else is then tuned out or layered or blocked out. Then the only thing that I hear is then everything that is within my bubble or my world that becomes what I think about and process, and then that in its own sense is peaceful because it's not the deep thoughts and thinking. It's a different type of peace that I get. But enough rambling, and let's actually get to the proper storyline. I am using a script, hopefully that isn't a bit too distracting with the movement of the eyes, but hopefully that isn't a bit too distracting now. Once again, from a young age, I've enjoyed my quiet spaces and my introverted nature. Well, I've enjoyed the quiet spaces or my being alone and all of that. And that has come with wanting to be out of the spotlight. So, even though, one thing that has stayed, I suppose, is that even though I have been out there learning the communication skills and all of that, I've still wanted to stay out of the spotlight because it's too much trouble for me. I don't like, it's too much trouble. So that's why I've tended to stay out of the spotlight. And I suppose one big thing as well was that I wanted to avoid being ridiculed. That was my number one thing. Where I suppose in primary going into high school, and I think in high school was a bit different because of the way it ended up going. But the main thing going into it was that to avoid being ridiculed. And the way that I did that, given my personality and the way I am wired, was that I would analyze. It's always analyzing with me. But the way I would do it was that I would analyze the way people's relationships and the way the relationships, the statuses, the way the hierarchy was, the way it was ranked, and all of that, to see. And also, I think in conversations as well. So someone mentions a word or something, right? I don't technically know what the word is. This still happens to this day, actually. I don't know what the word actually is, but I'm not going to say that I don't know what the word actually is. Instead, what I'll do is infer what the meaning is based on the context that they said it in. That's generally how it's. Which it's something that I've done where, say I'm sitting in a conversation with people, right? I'm naturally in conversations, don't talk as much unless I'm with, say, my close friends, I suppose. My close friends right now. In general, I technically don't speak, or rather, in general, in a group of people, I generally don't speak as much. Instead, what I do is tend to figure out everyone. I get everyone's flow first, and then know which lines to, where the lines are, where they are drawn. It's more so I am getting their flow and their feel. So whenever I say something, then that's something that I say has the most impact to them, and all of that. That's how it. That's how I think about it, I suppose. Although that's how it is intuitively done. Because I don't technically think about it; it just happens. But the way it happens, that's how it happens. Is that more so than not, in general, I don't speak. I just listen to the person, what they're saying, what they do, and then understanding their personality, their flow, and all of that. Then by doing that, I then get their flow, their feel. So whenever I say something or do something, then the impact of that is on a much higher or greater level than if I just ended up talking to them. That's just how it's been. So that's, I suppose, me analyzing the way my surroundings and all of that, the hierarchies and different things. And that is also, I could stay out of, say, troublesome situations, nosy situations where uh, anything to say that would, anything that would drop down my, I suppose, status, hierarchy, all of that. That's how I stayed out of it for pretty much primary in high school. But then I think another thing, the thing that helped me in primary was that I was more, well, okay, first thing is with me, I tend to not want to be put in a box. Meaning, whenever there always has to be something unique or different that I'm doing from everyone else. That just has to happen. That's just the way I am. And it has to be unique in a way that is me. If that makes sense. It always has to be unique, but unique in such a way that only I would do it, like no one else will. So there's that part, and then I suppose that's where, or even when I'm saying something, it has to be said in such a way that I'm the only one who could say it and no one else could. So that's the way I suppose the smartness and the intelligence come from. Where I suppose in the first episode, where it's intelligence not because of the books, but the intelligence because of the way I think and the way I am. And so that's where that comes from. So there is that, but I was also very, I suppose, good at academics in primary, and there's also the fact that I was good at the sports. I was good at the sports that I was doing, and I suppose, okay, so firstly, I was playing sports. I think that's the first part, and the sports that I was playing, I was good at. So, as in, I helped the team, like I was an integral part of the team and all of that. So, those two parts helped me a lot in primary, and then I suppose then now, I also know that I'm smart because I'm the one who tries to figure out the many different things because I'm just drawn to it. So that's another thing. But yeah, I was somewhat self assured and all of that. So I know that I am smart. So, and I try to make things unique and so. But technically, any person that I spoke to and all of that, I didn't really have a problem with, because I'd speak to you normally, properly, respect, politely, and all of that. But in high school, though, I read this book right here, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which, like I said, it's actually a good book, even though I gave it quite a bad, or well, it looked like I gave it quite a bad rap in the first episode. But I suppose for now, let's just look into the chapters. Chapters are: make friends quickly and easily, increase your popularity, win people to your way of thinking, increase your influence and your prestige. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and yeah, so it's actually a good book, really. But for me, what actually ended up happening was that I would. So this is a good book with the way it is written and the things that it gives you, but like I said, you need a base personality before you read this book, where then the things that you do then apply to your base personality instead of becoming your base personality. Say, treating people the way you should, treating them politely, treating them with respect, and so on, as well as all the other philosophy things that I've learned that become then the base, or the supposed base, instead of having a real proper base. But regardless to not wanting being ridiculed, I suppose another thing that ended up happening was reputation. That's another thing that happened where someone had a reputation uh to keep. So reputation is another one where throughout my can I say school career? But anyway, throughout my school career, I've been good at the academics. I've been good at the sports. I've always had the smart, intelligent persona. So that has been a reputation to keep what I've been having. Now, there's a reputation. Now that reputation then comes with an image or a with the way I do things, right? There now becomes a split between I'd then have an alter ego that was developing where that this only there are certain things that only happen when I am alone, and then the other thing that happen when I'm with other people. Now that happens in the sense of when I'm with other people. That happens in the sense that when I'm with other people, what happens is there's the respect, there's the politeness, there's the going out of my way to do what I can to help the other person wherever I can. And then so that is that, and then there's the alter ego of the effect of doing that where now on my side I crash, I suppose, because then if you do something where you have a high, then there will be a low, right? So that low would happen when I was alone, right? Sorry, that low would happen when I was alone. So that is somewhat then of the alter ego that then got developed, and I suppose that's when I started having these. That's when I suppose building a new personality, right? Where building a personality that's based on if off of improvement would then improvement will be the characteristics. Improvement will be the characteristics that you want to have, whereas these this alter ego that kept on developing would be then the your true personality that you should have, right? And then, but it's not an alter ego where I was completely neglecting one side over the other. It's just that in this certain situation, this would be the thing that I tend to do. In this situation, this habit was already formed that this would be the personality that I'd be going with. Whereas then when I am in my own space at home, that would then be freedom, I suppose, where I'd then be supplementing this thing which had no, I'd then be charging up the core because this I not an ideal, this personality that I'd have, right, would be the personality that I have would be the ideal that would be working towards the ideal that I want to have. So the best way to think about, okay, so there's the core self, which is me, and then there's my personality at that time, wherever it is, and the flaws that I see within it, right? And then there's a goal, or this is the type of personality that I'd want to have, that I'd want to look towards, that I want to achieve, and all of that, or push towards. I'd have that. And then there's the middle ground where this is the type of personality that is working towards that. So it's where I am, right, combined with what I want to improve on. So each step that I could improve on, this would be this personality, right, in the middle that I'd be doing, right. But because I'm pushing myself that much towards this end goal of getting these characteristics that I want in my personality, then there'd be a low, because then you're pushing yourself. It's like, let's say you're pushing yourself. By pushing yourself, you need to rest and that type of thing. So that's the thing that was happening, where I'd have this thing that I'm pushing, I'd have this personality that I'm pushing, whatever I'm learning, well, given these things. And by the way, this isn't the only book. There is Stoicism has had a really big impact on my life with the way things have gone. And so Stoicism, and I think I don't really have that many books around to actually show. There are a few actually on my, is it row, column, one? No, those are definitely wrong. On the shelf, right? So there are a few books on the shelf, but with me, it hasn't. The way I've gone about learning this world is that I've had the philosophy. I've had books which I haven't really technically read. I've read, but I haven't read. That makes no sense. So, I've read these books, right? I think I read this one 3 times. I read Master Key to Riches twice or 3 times. I read Think and Grow Rich twice or 3 times. But, okay, so what I'm getting to is that I think around 2021, 2022, I remember I counted I had 12 books, right? These are 12 books that I'd read in, say, 2021, 2018, 2021, in, say, 3 years, right? These are the books that I'd bought in 3 years, whereas the amount of material that I consumed had been much more. But the reason that is because I was in school, I suppose. So, coming back from school, I still had the school commitments, and I was playing. Can I say I was playing soccer full time? I suppose I was, but for an amateur club. So, oh well, I suppose it wasn't really technically. Let's just say part time. So I was playing soccer part time while having the school full time, and then so let's say soccer would be trained 2 times a week, and then I'd have the match day on the Saturday. So, and then on the side, I'm also training here and there, supplementing my training to add on to improvement and all of that. So, suppose you can say I was playing soccer part time, I was training, I was doing schoolwork full time. Now, added to that, then now that's technically why I haven't had time to read books like this one here, where then most of my content that I've learned has been through YouTube, the platform that I'm on. So most of the content that I've learned has been through YouTube and learning the videos, and that's where then Stoicism has been the main thing. I think that's the main linchpin. If you guys know what linchpins are, has been the pivotal point. Let's see if I can find a word for the younger audiences. Critical wouldn't be good, but critical, pivotal, linchpin. It's been Stoicism in my life. So, and Stoicism I learned through, say, YouTube, and Stoicism is the paraphrasing it wise, from what I remember, or the way I think about it, is that okay, I can't say it's the idea, but it's more so having control over your own life in a way that your emotions don't get control over you. So that's having control over your emotions is basically number one, I suppose. I will make a video on. I have a video coming up on who you are, which will then make much more sense with the context of this. But basically, it is controlling your emotional self. That is literally it. If you can control your emotional self, you can control a lot. You control, I suppose, your desire and all of that. But it's basically Stoicism is controlling your emotional self, and by controlling your emotional self, you control a lot of things because your emotions are technically the energy that drives you, and so on. I'll get into it in a future video. So, alter ego was developed, and this was the situation. But I was also in a improvement phase, so it didn't have that much of an effect on me. Oh well, because I was so lost in improving or pushing the boundaries that oh well, let me just say the cup of improvement that I had wasn't full yet. It's not full now, but it is full in a different way. So the cup that I had back then on improvement in the sense of learning whatever I could to add on to who I am personally and all of that. So that cup was still empty. So whatever thing, that's just I'm still adding on to this cup of learning what I need to learn before I could move on to the next cup. Or I suppose another way to think about it is climbing this mountain of improvement where I know nothing about this Stoicism world. I don't know how to do it and all of that. That's climbing that mountain first before I move on to the mountain of figuring out what all of this means, how that plays into my personality, and then climbing up the mountain of figuring out who I am, how that personality works, and all of that. So, I suppose throughout that time, then I developed a my mind. My mind had been preoccupied with the improvement that I didn't get time to hear the inner voice, what the inner voice was saying, and then through this as well, through reading these books and I keep on saying Stoicism, but it's not necessarily. So it's Stoicism, I suppose, but it's not Stoic. So there is Stoicism was where it started, right? Which is why I say it's the critical point or pivotal point. But that's where it started. But then, from Stoicism, there are other. Then, so my door in was Stoicism, but after Stoicism, then comes all the other things you learn as an effect of learning Stoicism. So then you get introduced to how the obstacle is the way to grow. Obstacle is the way, which is a book by Ryan Holiday, and then Ego is the Enemy. I think is another book, also by Ryan Holiday. And most of my learnings, I suppose, has been through YouTube. But by by getting a door in using Stoicism, I then get a door into the other deeper philosophical aspects of the world around. Then by getting deeper into that, then you get more. Then I get more into seeing that life is what it is. I suppose flipping or letting life be as is, and then removing the attachment of emotion from the way life, removing the attachment of emotion to what is currently happening in your life. So if something happens, then you don't say it's a blessing or a curse, and then something else happens, you don't say it's a blessing or a curse because you don't. It's outside of your control. So things like that. Where now I'm just diving much more and more deeper into this layer of philosophy, and once again, everything that I do has to be done with a sense of meanness or uniqueness that is unique to me, done in a way that I'm the only one who does it, no one else can. So I'm also trying to understand what all of this means in such a way that I'll be able to say it and explain it to you that you can't. There's no way of saying it's come. Okay, I suppose you can't say it came from someone else, cause anyway. But it's undeniable that it came from me. So that's another thing. But to get to the actual story of where then I suppose am I actually someone worthy of being valued? This backstory is, I suppose, is important to learn where and how things are. Well, how things the backstory is important to understand the true story of how things went and all of that. I had something, but now I lost it, and it's not necessarily in the script. But yeah, I suppose. But there also are some other perfect storms that combined. Perfect storms in the sense of I've been adaptable. That's the that's another one. Is that I've been adaptable. So whenever a bad situation would happen, I would adapt, and then you can somewhat think of it as adapting to the wrong situations, where something, I suppose, a sign would happen, and then adapt to it in a different way and develop something else, and then I'd get somewhere that would get, suppose, barricaded. I just twist and turn, get somewhere else, and that's I won't be able to get through all of them right now since I don't have all of that really. But I think another thing I had developed was the ability to ignore what I had been feeling, which ties into Stoicism. But the ability to ignore what I've been feeling is, technically speaking, that comes from football, or it's soccer in South Africa, so I want to call it soccer. So the ability to ignore that comes from playing soccer, in the sense that you do whatever you need to do to get the team across the line. That's what it means. So, however tired you are, and that is more of a, that's where the to live and to die on a battlefield comes from, actually. Which check up there, which another painstaking week before this one. That's when I made that video. So that's when to live and to die comes from, where you do whatever you can to get the team across, and normally that is done in situations where you have you across the line, you're about to get to achieve what you want to achieve, or supposed to win the game that you have to win, or to keep this game, to keep winning, or that close to winning, or to maintain the winning scoreline that you have, and so on. So that's when then you give up everything on the field, everything in the sense of that you're running your lungs out and some more, and pushing yourself past your own human limits to win, in a sense. So it is true that that's where then ignoring how I'm feeling comes in, for the sake of doing what needs to be done. And well, technically it's not a it's not a bad thing, depending on how it's used. If it's overused, then well, obviously you can see how it could be a bad thing. But that's where then, in the way that it has recently, in the way that it has, I suppose, affected me, is how it's gotten me over the line, studying wise or school wise, where now, especially since I've been studying on the last day. But funny enough, I don't feel like changing it. Oh well, I suppose I will now, since I don't have the podcast and all of that. But I suppose I will change it now. But it's with that sense of knowing that I will do whatever I do, whatever. It's with the sense of knowing that I can do whatever I need to do when I need to do it, regardless of how I'm feeling in that moment, that I'm able to then push through. It's, in a sense, ignoring the way I'm feeling to get whatever needs to be done, to get done. And this technically, I said, it technically comes from me playing football at such a young. It comes from 2017. I went to a VW Junior Masters tournament, and does it? Okay, it comes from. That's where it comes from, and then slowly there, it's like then through learning Stoicism and honor. I haven't said that word in the context and nostalgia that I have. I mean, I had a code of honor that I say, this is my code of honor. It was an internal code of honor that I used to live. I'd say, this is the code of honor that I live by. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. That was my, it's quite nostalgic, I suppose. The honor that you should have as a man, I suppose. The honor, the code of honor. So that's pretty nostalgic, I suppose. It was a type of innate sense of, what I would say, it's an innate sense of wanting to be. It was an innate code of honor, where these are just the things that I'm feeling, and I'm not gonna do this or sway from that. It was like an imprint in my soul, if that makes sense. It was an imprint in my soul that this is the way that things are gonna be. So that was my code of honor. I've realized that I've stumbled very far from, am I someone worthy of being valued? And now that I said that at the start, I can't really change it now because I'm in. So hopefully I'm not boring you, I suppose, with this episode of moving along. Hopefully you are getting some value in it. But let's get to the actual story of how I actually got to say, am I someone worthy of being valued? Pretty crazy though, when I'm thinking back to this nostalgia of, say, times in 2018, 2019, thinking about all those things and how now life has been different. But yeah, I suppose. Anyway, so if you'd like to hear some of the lessons and perspectives that I've learned, then do check out Thoughts and Perspective, which is a collection on my old newsletter articles. So if you'd like to expand the world, expand the way you see the world, then I do recommend that you do check that out. And that whole collection that I have out on my Patreon page, link will be in the description. So I do recommend you check that out. And well, I was reading some of the things. I wrote that last year, I suppose. And now reading back some of the things, and well, honestly speaking, some of them flew over my mind. And I mean, I'm the one who wrote them. So it does serve to show that even though in the coming videos and podcast, I may be dropping some, I suppose, bombshells on philosophy, the way I see the world, structures, and all that, even though I might be dropping some bombshells and all of that, a few months down the line, I could be the one looking at this thing and I'm like, there's no way I said this and that this is flying over my head. And all of that. It's more so that it's more so like it's a hobby. So think about how someone gets lost in this world. Say, if it's cars, how they get lost in cars, how they got lost in technology, how they get lost in... I'm looking at my keyboard, so how they get lost in keyboards, I suppose lights, camera, video, whatever that may be. How they get lost in that, it's a video. It's a hobby that they get lost in, an interest that they get lost in, that they just get lost in it. And it affects their life, but it's not like... It doesn't have that... It may not necessarily be the thing that they're always thinking about. In the sense that they're thinking about it because it's a hobby or because they enjoy it and like it, but they're not thinking about it because their life revolves around it, if that makes sense. But let's get to it. So in 2020 we had a few lockdowns. Now during that lockdown, this I suppose is where the story gets a bit dark, perhaps. But anyway, in 2020, to recap, like I said, I am one person who always likes being unique. For what reason, I don't know. I'm just drawn to it. I like the challenge, I like the fun, and all of that. So being unique is just what I do, what I like, what I enjoy. So I've been drawn to being unique, and that doesn't really leave me with a lot of... Apart from being unique, there's intelligence that come with it. It just says the want for the challenge, all that. So personality-wise, it doesn't leave me with a lot of people to gel with, or who would buy into that type of lifestyle. So in 2020, during suppose lockdown, I felt that's when I realized that I actually had no friends, or it felt like I had no friends, since that there was really no connection between me and the friends that I had. So leading up to that point, I did have these small hobbies that I had. Leading up to the lockdown, I suppose I did have these small things that I had where I'd get some fun from them. And I suppose even in the soccer team, it was a new team that I was playing with. So it was like everything was sort of... There was no built structure of friends that I had around me during that time. So I suppose it would make sense then that in 2020 as well, I suppose also in grade 10 when people choose their subjects, and generally the friends that you have who are in the same class with you, and everything was just like starting from scratch and starting new and all of that. So it was with that I felt that I didn't have any friends, I suppose. That's really the best way to put it, is that I felt that I didn't have any friends around. And with that came, I suppose, it's quite... I'm not sure if you guys have felt this way. Right now, at 19, doesn't feel as bad saying that you don't have as friends, since I've had my own fight with it, I suppose. But now at 19, you just realize that the world... Okay, for me at 19, realizing it just... the world is... Okay, for me, I realize that my personality and characteristic, they're all over the place, and but also the rules and the ways that life works out. I suppose the way life works out is that it naturally tends to being you being alone, as in there's so many things happening with you as a person, not just with, so there is me with the way, but even you for yourself, you're saying that there's so many things happening with me that I need my own time to just figure all of these things out, whether you're introvert or extrovert. Just for every person, once you hit quote unquote adulthood, you there is a need to be someone, to get some alone time and understand. And then also you do realize that uh, I said this in my intro video, that no one is coming to save you. So with that realization that you have to figure out your own life, you have to figure your own life out and all of that, then the idea of being alone as well, that friends slow you down and friends aren't as trustworthy here and there, I suppose. Okay, but now let me just say that the way I build my friend groups now is different. It depends on the way you think about friends and all of that, but in a general sense, everyone has their own way of life, and friends could sometimes be the people that drag you down. So, as a blanket statement saying that friends aren't, as a blanket statement saying that you have no friends isn't really that big of a deal. Depending on where you, if you're not in the space where you wanna be, then as a blanket statement saying that you don't have no friends isn't really a big deal, because if the friends that you make in general, you'll tend to actually out improve them. So by out improving them, you're already moving into a new out, and that actually bring you down if they don't have the same vision as you. So it's not a bad thing that if you're in a if you're in a situation where you don't want to be in, that you don't have friends. But there's some nuance here and there. But I'm just now the way I see it, it's not as big of a deal. But let's see, that was what. So when I was 14, right? Saying that at 14 that you have no friends is a lot more, say, miserable. I suppose it's a lot more miserable when there aren't any connection that you have around you. As in, you wake up, you stay in the house. Sometimes you have Wi-Fi, sometimes you don't. I mean, I read the Harry Potter series 3 times. That 7 story series, I read it 3 times. During the 3 weeks that we had no COVID, I read that story 3 times. So Harry Potter is not bad, I must say. The book is actually pretty nice. But I read the story 3 times during the 3 weeks that I had. We had no Wi-Fi, so, and then even when I had Wi-Fi, there was no sense of wanting to message people on WhatsApp, because it wouldn't really be that. It wouldn't feel meaningful. So there was that sense of. So at 14, it's a bit it's a bit painful, I suppose, understanding that you don't really have many friends around, and how that actually plays out is then okay. So that's, I suppose, during lockdown, and then we get back to. So used to saying we get back to campus, but we get back to school, and with the masks and everything. So we get back to school, and then I greet the usual people that I knew, the usual friends. I'm like, okay, so maybe I do have friends, but I can't actually say that I have close friends, because then I suppose I had a structure that I wanted. My close friends would be these people. These are the people that I'd share, that I quote unquote, not necessarily uh, ride or die with, but to that level, I suppose. So that's the way. So I didn't have that many, suppose, close friends that I would say would be good. But then I realized, okay, so maybe I do have a few friends, but now this is the situation that I find myself in, where I find myself with no friends, and I suppose with the personality that I have, it's a difficult personality to understand. Now, there's a sense of which game do you play when you're approaching new people, going about understanding friends. Which game do you play? Do you play the game of wanting to be out there, be out there, showing yourself, being out there, showing yourself, showing and being out there, showing up and creating friends that way, the way I suppose the extroverts create friends. So are you gonna make friends that way, or are you gonna be in your shell like you have been and hope that someone is gonna come in and break your shell, figure out, have enough curiosity about you that they want to break into your shell, and then you create your friends that way? That is the two ways of thinking about it. And well, looking at this book, when I actually needed friends, it didn't help. But, which, yeah, so take what you will, but when I think back to my experience with this book, then it's not a good relationship, but reading it now, yeah, it makes sense, because funny enough, in the business, it makes sense, because in the business world, then with how people are so busy and all of that, you just need a small thing to create a relationship here and there, and then that relationship could end up with you being friends and all of that. So in the business world, it makes sense. With where I was, it didn't. But back to the dynamic of it's you. I've got those two dynamics with me, and then there is also, I suppose, what type of mask do you put up? I didn't really need to put up a mask, but there's also, I think, back then people are putting up masks to cover up their personality, to show that they are supposed better than they are. Okay, maybe. Okay, they're putting up masks for whatever reason people put up masks for, but yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, so I'm in this state where it's a choice between whether I whether I stay shelled or do I go out and think. But the one that I go with is that I need to be out there, right? I need to be out there, which another pivotal moment is. But I need to be out there, go out there, and do what I need to do to make life be the way that I want it to be. Not necessarily get friends, but to make life be the way that I want it to be. So that is the way that I choose to go out. And I mentioned the feeling of mask because the way I saw it, my personality is so complicated that even with no mask, you don't understand the way it works. So imagine if I had a mask, that would just be chaotic, which is why I didn't think about having a mask. But I did write an article on the inevitability of the mask, so why people have masks on. So if you're interested in checking that out, the link will be in the description below as well. You can check that out on my Patreon collection. And well, that is how my self-improvement journey started. Me going out there to get what I want. Basically, that's how my self-improvement journey started. And if you check the first episode, that is how I've ended up in this position where it's leading into my downfall. 50 minutes. Ooh, this might be a very, very long episode. Wow. Okay. Is there anyone here? Maybe you're watching it in sections and all of that. Oh, I still have so much to cover. Oh well, whatever happens, happens, I suppose. Right. So we have my dynamic, and there's no need for me to be a mosque. And self improvement is that's how my self improvement journey started. Now, I had a person that was difficult to understand, but along with that, I had many different edges that I had, as in I had a sense of I had an egotistical edge, right? Egotistical in the sense of, so I'd been playing soccer for some time. Back then, 2020, I've been playing soccer for 7 years, I suppose. So I was pretty good from my view at it compared to my peers. So I'd been playing soccer for 7 years by then. Whenever I needed to, I could. School wise, I was doing well. So I knew that I could say some things to make people go, okay, I never thought about it that way. And I suppose blow their minds, basically. I knew I could do that. And it's not that, so say we have a conversation, it's not that I wouldn't want to take advice or not willing to take suggestions and here and there. But it's just that when I've been in a world stuck thinking about personality, my mind, the way my things are gonna go, it's just that whenever conversation comes up about that, they generally tend to not be as deep as I was willing to go. So that tends are supposed to bring up then that you're arrogant, you're arrogant, not willing to listen to other people, but it's more so that your points don't, and the level of depth your points go into aren't to the same level of depth that mine have gone into. So they aren't going to be at the same level because who at 15 and 16 was trying to understand human behavior while trying to understand the world philosophically, how it worked, the structures of all of that. From my point of view, or well, from the way the world why was the way my world was back then, there just wasn't anyone doing that. So that is how I started. So it was with that as well. I actually went about self improvement, trying to understand how to make an impact on people and all of that. But seeing that this episode has been as long as it is, and perhaps it could go on for 2 hours, perhaps it should be cut down. This is the second episode. I don't know how things should go. So I still need to edit it and see how things go. I mean, the space on my phone right now, if my recording is still going on, is probably 30 gigs maybe. So I'll check it out then maybe for future episodes if this requires me to go longer. I mean, I don't even know if anyone is watching at this point. I could just be talking to myself. So I suppose I will stop it here, and links will be in the description for thoughts and perspectives on the collection if you want to expand your worldview a bit more, as well as inevitability of the monster that's in the same collection. So you check it out, and if you do want to work with me one-on-one on how you could dive into your own personality, see how you could find more purpose and meaning in your life, then do check that in the description below. Work with me one-on-one, fill out the form, and then I'll get an email on that, and then we could see how we could work together and put your life together in a better, to see if you could move towards a better direction, better place, and of that. And with that, this was Am I Worthy of Being Valued at I don't know, 55 minutes now, maybe an hour. Part 1. There's still part 2 and probably part 3 coming. So at least I have content, I suppose. And while why I'm filming with, I suppose, baggy eyes, I have the energy to film, and content has to be released. So that's how it works, I suppose. New videos coming soon. From my eyes, they're gonna be bombshells, but only the market will tell, and I suppose you guys are the market. So if you did enjoy this, then do share if you feel it will help anyone. And am I someone worth of being valued? Part 2 coming soon.